Have you ever felt like you're speaking a language no one else understands? Not literally. Your words make sense, your grammar is fine, you're articulate enough. But there's something underneath the words that doesn't translate. You talk about meaning, purpose, something beyond the surface, and people look at you like you just asked them to explain quantum mechanics using interpretive dance. Or maybe it's the opposite. Maybe you're the one who doesn't understand what everyone else seems obsessed with. Status updates that feel empty. Conversations that never go deeper than weather and weekend plans. Goals that sound hollow when you examine them closely. And you wonder, am I broken? Am I missing something everyone else has? Or are they missing something I can see? Here's what nobody told you, but what certain ancient traditions knew with precision. You're not broken. You're operating on a different frequency. And there are exactly 3 frequencies human consciousness operates on at any given time. Not personality types, not zodiac signs, not Myers-Briggs categories. 3 fundamental operating systems that determine how you process reality itself. Thoth didn't call them frequencies, of course. Different traditions use different terms. But the map is consistent across cultures that bothered to observe closely. And once you see this map, you can't unsee it. You'll recognize which system you're running. You'll understand why certain people feel like home and others feel like foreign countries. You'll stop trying to have deep conversations with people whose systems literally cannot process depth. And you'll stop judging yourself for not fitting where you were never meant to fit. Let me show you the map. Operating system. 1. The loop. The first operating system, let's call it the loop, is how most human consciousness operates most of the time. Not because people choose it consciously, but because it's the default installation. You're born, your brain develops, language installs, culture programs you, and by age 7, the loop is running. Here's how to recognize it. People operating on the loop are not stupid. They're often highly functional. They hold jobs, raise families, follow laws, contribute to society. Everything works, except one specific thing. They never ask why. Not the surface. Why is the sky blue? The deep why. Why am I here? What's the point of any of this? What happens after the biological machinery stops? These questions either never occur to them, or if they do, they're dismissed instantly. That's just how life is. Everyone dies, don't think about it. Just be happy with what you have. The loop operates on 2 axes. Horizontal axis, connection to other humans, social belonging, tribal validation. Survival axis, food, shelter, safety, reproduction, resource accumulation. Both axes function perfectly. Someone in the loop can be an excellent parent, loyal friend, hard worker, kind neighbor. But there's a third axis that's completely dormant. The vertical axis. Connection to source, to meaning beyond survival, to dimensions that transcend material existence. In the loop, this axis isn't broken, it's simply off, like a radio that only receives AM frequencies. The FM frequencies exist, they're broadcasting, but the receiver isn't tuned to detect them. And here's the part that makes people uncomfortable. You cannot force activate the vertical axis in someone operating on the loop. No amount of explaining, convincing, or sharing profound experiences will do it. Because you're trying to transmit on a frequency their system isn't currently receiving. It's not their fault. It's not your fault. It's just how the system is configured in that moment. Have you ever tried to explain a spiritual experience to someone and watched their eyes glaze over? Or shared something that moved you deeply and got back, "That's nice," with 0 resonance? That wasn't rejection. That was incompatible operating systems attempting to communicate. Now here's what's crucial to understand. The loop is not permanent. It's a state, not a sentence. Someone can operate in the loop for decades and then, through crisis, loss, psychedelic experience, near-death event, or spontaneous awakening, the vertical axis can suddenly activate. The system can upgrade, but it cannot be forced from outside. The activation has to come from within, triggered by circumstances that breach the loop's closed circuit. If you're hearing this and thinking, "That's most people I know," you're probably right. Roughly 70–80% of human consciousness operates predominantly in the loop at any given time. This isn't judgment, it's observation. And if you're hearing this and feeling superior, stop. Because the loop serves a function. Civilization requires the loop to function. Someone needs to keep infrastructure running, follow protocols, maintain stability. The loop is the foundation. Without it, everything else collapses. But if you're hearing this and feeling seen, feeling like you've never quite fit into the loop no matter how hard you tried, then you're likely operating on a different system. Operating system 2, the oscillation. The second operating system, let's call it the oscillation, is where many people who consider themselves spiritual or awakening actually operate. Here's how it works. All three axes are present: horizontal, survival, and vertical. But the vertical axis is unstable. It turns on and off, connects and disconnects. Someone in the oscillation wakes up one morning and feels connected to something infinite. They meditate, they journal, they see meaning everywhere, they feel purpose flowing through them. This lasts for days, weeks, maybe even months. They think, "I've finally figured it out. I'm awake now. This is permanent." And then life happens. A financial crisis, a relationship crisis, a health crisis, a deadline, a distraction, and the vertical axis shuts off. They're back in the loop, back to survival mode and social mode, no longer accessing the dimension that felt so real just weeks ago. They forget they ever meditated. They forget what it felt like to be connected. They forget the questions that once burned in them, until something triggers it again, and the cycle repeats, on, off, on, off, on, off. The oscillation is not lack of sincerity. People in this state are genuinely seeking, they're not faking it. When the vertical axis is active, they mean it, but they haven't figured out how to keep it stable. And here's why. The oscillation happens when the vertical axis is conditional. It activates when external conditions are favorable, when you have time, space, peace, support. It deactivates when external conditions become demanding, when survival and social pressures take over. You can recognize the oscillation in yourself or others by these patterns: spiritual phases that come and go. Buying books, courses, retreats, then abandoning them halfway through. Discovering a teaching that feels like the answer. Getting excited for weeks, then forgetting it existed. Having profound realizations that fade within days. Feeling connected to Source during a retreat, then losing it completely when back in daily life. Starting practices with enthusiasm, then stopping when things get busy. If you're in the oscillation, you're probably feeling a mix of hope and frustration right now. Hope, maybe I can stabilize this. Frustration, why can't I keep this connection consistent? And here's the truth, most spiritual teachers won't tell you directly. Most people teaching spirituality are operating in the oscillation themselves. They have glimpses, they have experiences, they have moments of clarity, but the vertical axis isn't stable. It flickers, and they teach from the moments when it's on, hoping it will stay on, secretly terrified it will turn off again. This isn't fraud. It's just where they are. The oscillation is a valid state, it's part of the journey, but it's not the end of the map, because there's a choice point in the oscillation. A choice that, when made with full commitment, changes everything. The choice is this: do you want stability in the world or stability in Source? You cannot have both simultaneously. Living anchored in the vertical axis means accepting permanent discomfort on the horizontal axis. It means never fully fitting in again. It means choosing truth over comfort, meaning over approval, depth over belonging. Most people in the oscillation, when they see this choice clearly, choose the horizontal. They choose belonging. They choose social acceptance. They choose a life that makes sense to others. And the vertical axis shuts off again, not forever. It might reactivate later, in another phase, another crisis, another opening. But for that cycle, it's done. However, there's a minority within the minority. People in the oscillation who make the opposite choice. Who choose the vertical even knowing what it costs. Who choose truth even when truth hurts. And when they make this choice with total commitment, sustaining it through the consequences. The operating system changes. Operating system 3, the anchor. The third operating system, let's call it the anchor, represents the rarest configuration, far rarer than the spiritual marketplace makes it seem. In the anchor, all three axes are present: horizontal, survival, and vertical. But the vertical axis is permanently active. No matter what happens externally, No matter how chaotic life gets, no matter the crises, the losses, the distractions, the vertical axis stays on. This changes everything. Someone operating in the anchor doesn't have spiritual phases. The connection isn't something they practice, it's something they are. Like breathing, you don't have to remember to do it. It happens automatically. In the anchor, connection to source is involuntary, constant, permanent. This doesn't make someone perfect, doesn't eliminate personality flaws, doesn't guarantee wisdom in all areas, doesn't mean they never make mistakes, but it means they operate from a different gravitational center, a stability that doesn't depend on circumstances. You recognize someone in the anchor not by what they say, but by the field they emanate. There's a quality of presence, a density of attention, an inner silence you can feel even when they're speaking. When you're near someone in this state, something in you tends to calm down, not because they did anything specific, but because their stable vertical axis resonates with yours, even if yours is still unstable. Like two instruments, one tuned stabilizes the vibration of the other. People in the anchor aren't seeking anymore because they've found. Not found answers. Answers are conceptual, mental, formulatable in words. They found source itself. And once you find source, the search ends. Not because everything got answered, but because the question that motivated the search ceased to exist as a question. The thirst ended, not because you catalogued every type of water, but because you drank. Operating in the anchor in the current world is simultaneously freedom and weight. Freedom because you're free from the prison of pure horizontal existence. Weight because you'll never feel completely at home in the collective consensus again. Someone in the anchor lives in the world, but doesn't belong to the world. They operate here, but their center of gravity is elsewhere, and this creates a peculiar loneliness, not loneliness from lack of people around, but structural loneliness, the awareness that you're operating on a frequency few can access. And here's an important truth about the anchor. It cannot be artificially forced. No technique, no matter how powerful, permanently transforms someone if the internal choice wasn't made. No workshop, retreat, or initiation installs the vertical axis stably in someone who hasn't decided to pay the price. The loop can awaken to the oscillation through experiences that break the pattern. The oscillation can stabilize to the anchor through irrevocable sustained choice. But there's no shortcut. No hack, no technique that substitutes for the decision. And often those in the anchor recognize there was always something different. The child who looked at the night sky and felt something nameless. The teenager who felt profound boredom, even surrounded by stimulation. The adult who always knew there was something beyond, even when the entire environment denied it. This doesn't always mean the person was born anchor. Sometimes it means the vertical axis was active early, waiting for conditions to stabilize it. What matters isn't when it started. What matters is if it's stable now. The inevitable question. So here's the question that's been present since the beginning. Which of these three systems describes how you operate? I could give you external criteria, lists of signs, symptoms, indicators, but the truth is simpler. You probably already know. If you're operating predominantly in the loop, this content probably didn't make much sense. Seems too abstract, disconnected from real life, woo-woo, without practical application. And that's fine. Maybe it's not for now. Maybe it's never for you. No problem with that. If you're operating in the oscillation, you're feeling a mixture of things right now. Hope, maybe I can stabilize this. Fear, what if I'm stuck oscillating forever? Restlessness, how do I actually do this? If you're operating in the anchor, you're not wondering, you're recognizing something you always knew but maybe never heard formulated this way. Recognizing the structural loneliness you've always felt. Recognizing why you never quite fit into any group, any tradition, any system. But careful. The temptation to self-identify as anchor is strong. The ego loves identifying with the highest mode. So here's a simple test. If you felt pride identifying as anchor, you're probably still in the oscillation, because those truly operating in the anchor don't feel pride about it. They feel the weight, they feel the responsibility, they feel the loneliness. And they've accepted all of it as part of the package. The path from oscillation to anchor. If you recognize yourself in the oscillation and want to stabilize the vertical axis, there's a path. It's not easy, it's not quick, but it works for those who genuinely decide to walk it. Step 1. The decision, not an elaborate ritual. An internal declaration, honest without witnesses. I choose consistency with the vertical, even if it costs social comfort. This doesn't need to be dramatic. It needs to be true. And you'll know if it's true by how the next weeks unfold. Step 2. Boundaries. Not impulsive ruptures. Boundaries. Identify what constantly pulls you into automatic mode. Draining relationships, numbing activities, frequency-lowering environments. And make a clear commitment. For 30 days, you reduce by 50% your exposure to what pulls you into automatic. Not about cutting everything violently, about creating space, because without space, the vertical axis has nowhere to stabilize. Step 3. Minimum daily practice. 15 minutes. Non-negotiable can be meditation, contemplation, silent walking, reflective writing. But it's every day, because the vertical axis stabilizes through repeated reinforcement. A little, every day, without exception. 15 minutes daily is better than 2 hours once a week. Consistency rebuilds the system. Sporadic intensity just agitates. Step 4. Distraction diet. For 40 days, drastic reduction of social media. Doesn't need to be zero, but needs to be conscious. Reduction of news, especially designed to generate emotional reaction. Reduction of passive entertainment, especially before sleep. And 1 day per week of greater silence. A day where you minimize external stimuli and maximize internal listening. This isn't punishment, it's nervous system reset. Because if you're accustomed to operating horizontally, your system is addicted to constant stimulation, and addictions need gradual abstinence to be restructured. Step 5. Cross the crisis. At some point during these 40 days, the urge to quit will come. It'll seem like you're doing something stupid, that you should return to normal life, that none of this is working. That's the test. When this urge comes, you don't increase intensity. You also don't stop. You just continue. Continue at minimum. Continue without drama. Continue because you decided to continue. And if you cross this point, something shifts. The vertical axis begins to stabilize, not because you did something spectacular, but because you proved to your own system that the decision was real. Important note. If during this process you notice anxiety or depressive symptoms significantly increasing, pause. This isn't failure, it's information. Seek support. Talk to someone. Adjust the process. Intense spiritual practices can destabilize systems that first need basic care. Taking care of foundation isn't weakness, it's wisdom. If you're already in the anchor, and if you already operate in the anchor, you don't need a protocol. You need remembering. Remembering that being in this mode isn't personal privilege, it's function. Each person operating in the anchor has a specific role. Be frequency anchor. Your simple presence keeps something open, something that without you would close. You don't need to do anything spectacular. Don't need to found a movement. Don't need thousands of followers. Don't need to be recognized. You just need to be. Be present, conscious, anchored in the vertical while operating in the horizontal. That alone maintains cracks open in the collective consensus, cracks through which other people can glimpse that there's something beyond, and eventually make their own choices. Your loneliness isn't punishment, it's positioning. You're where you need to be, doing what needs to be done, even if no one, including you sometimes, fully understands why. The synthesis. So here's the synthesis. Not everyone operates on the same consciousness frequency, and not even the same person operates on the same frequency all the time. This isn't moral judgment, it's functional mapping. A map for you to locate yourself. Those in the loop aren't inferior. They're fulfilling necessary function for civilization to work. The base needs to exist for the rest to rest upon. Those in the oscillation aren't weak. They're maintaining evolutionary tension alive, oscillating between worlds, keeping the possibility of awakening present in the collective field. Those in the anchor aren't superior. They're paying the price of vertical anchoring, with everything that implies of weight and responsibility. All have function. All are part of the system. But not all operate equally. And pretending they do is dishonesty that helps no one. The question that matters isn't, why do three modes exist? The question is, which mode do I predominantly operate in, and am I living aligned with it? Because the greatest suffering comes from trying to operate in a way that doesn't correspond to your current configuration. Trying to force awakening when the system isn't ready generates frustration. Trying to force stability without making the real choice generates perpetual oscillation. Trying to force belonging when you already know total belonging won't happen generates silent pain that never passes. Recognize where you are, not where you'd like to be, where you are today. And from there, decide the next step. Breathe deeply. If you made it here, something in you recognized some truth in this. Not necessarily agreed with everything, recognized. And recognition is the beginning of any real movement. If this resonated, you know what to do from here. And if it didn't resonate, you also know. Move forward, without resentment, without judgment, just recognizing that not every message is for everyone, and not every moment is the right moment. If you want to leave a signal of where you find yourself today, comment just one letter, L, O, or A. Not for me, for you to claim, even if only internally, where you're operating now. And remember, now is the key word, because this is state, not fixed identity, and states change. When you decide, they change.